Hello again there folks, Lone Adventurer here. Thank you very much for stumbling your way upon my channel and joining me for this adventure. Today we're going to be taking a look at Fantasy Map Maker, which is a game from Doopy Games, designed and illustrated by Harry Metcalf. This is the same designer as Dungeon Map Maker, which some of you may know I was a little involved with, since not only did I cover it during the Kickstarter campaign earlier this year, I also drew a number of maps that are included in the official map pack that you get alongside the game. But before we get to Fantasy Map Maker, can I ask you to consider subscribing to my channel if you want to see more adventures just like this one. So this is a game that I've been looking forward to covering for quite some time. It's a map drawing game and I like drawing maps. I draw quite a few maps under my pseudonym of Ways Unseen. You can check my maps out on Instagram and various other places. And Fantasy Map Maker is a game that requires you to draw a map. In fact, the whole game really is drawing a map. We have these map sheets. I should also say that the designer Harry sent me these map sheets and these cards in order to put together a video because he is launching a new Kickstarter for this game very, very soon. In the description down below there will be a link either to the pre-launch page or to the live Kickstarter if it's already gone live. And that Kickstarter is going to be a physical release for a game that previously was only released digitally. So it will include, no doubt, a rulebook. I printed out this rulebook myself previous to agreeing to make the video, purely because I wanted to check the game out anyway. But Harry sent me these maps, this chunky old map pack, which no doubt will also be included in the Kickstarter, and also these cards. Now the finish for these cards will be slightly different in the final version, but I don't think you're going to be able to notice that in the video. So in this game you will use some of these cards to establish objectives that you will try to conform to as you are creating your map. And then over a series of rounds you'll roll dice and use those dice to dictate which features on this wheel you will draw. And then eventually you will either get to the point where you can't continue to play, or if you get to the point where you want to draw a line under it and say, do you know what, I think my map is complete, then you stop, you score based upon the quests that you've chosen, and you get a score out of 100. If you're playing solo, we have some AI opponents, and you work out the score of the AI opponents based upon the quests that you've chosen, and then you see how you stack up against them. So I'm going to move the pad aside, I'm going to bring over a single sheet that we will be drawing on, and then we'll take a closer look at the cards. So our cards are split into quest cards, main quest cards, and event cards. So we'll start by looking at the main quest cards. These are probably the most important ones, and they give you a series of objectives that we are trying to conform to as we are playing. So for example, if you are playing with the Seafaring Tribes quest, 4 points per separate landmass that has a landmark on it, then you would probably play in a way that would prioritise spreading your landmarks out, making sure you've got some islands to pop them on. So the quests that you choose very much affect how you play the game. They remind me a little bit, perhaps because of the large card size, of the objectives that you get in Cascadia. Cascadia isn't really the sort of game that we play here on the Lone Adventurer channel, but it's a game that I'm quite fond of, that I play with my partner quite a bit. And you have these objective cards. So for example, for the salmon, you are trying to get increasingly large runs of salmon tiles. And then we've got objectives for your little foxes, objectives for your bears, and your hawks, and your Roosevelt elk. Yeah, so it made me think a little bit about that. The objectives also reminded me quite a bit of cartographers. which is a game in which you get a whole bunch of objective cards. Sorry, I played this game quite a lot, which means I've got it sleeved so that I don't damage my precious cards. But again, we have objective cards that are split into a series of types, and you play with one of each type. So these are the field and water objective cards. Then you've got the settlement objective cards and the forest objective cards. And so having objectives like that means that you're encouraged to adapt how you play. Every time you play, you're going to have a different combination of quests, and that means that the way you draw your map is going to change as you strive to score the best score that you possibly can based upon the quest cards that you have chosen. So let's have a look at the types of quest cards that we have. First one we've got here is the wheel quest. And these are based on the wheel here that we have at the top of the game sheet. So whilst the majority of the quests are based upon what you're drawing, this one is based upon the wheel. So for example, if you had close the wheel, you'd get 4 points per completed wedge. The wheel is split into 6 wedges, and if you complete a wedge, then you get 4 points. Then we have got the town quests, and these are based upon placement of buildings and towns. So for example, the Lakeside Villa quest requires you to have spaces containing lakes and houses. So if you've got a lake in a space, you get a point per house that is also in that space with the lake. Then you've got the landmark quest. Landmarks are special types of buildings. Are they all buildings? Not entirely. So they are special elements that you can place on your map, and these quests relate to those. So for Journey's End, you get 4 points per space that has a landmark and a road in it. Then we have got the nature quests. So these are all related to physical features. Flowing streams, for example, 2 points per space that has a forest and a stream. And then finally we've got the geology quests, and these are related to mountains and islands and oceans. So for example, the precipitous peaks, 2 points per space that has mountains on all 4 corners. So those are the quests. There's quite a few of them. So the game comes with the continent, which is an expansion, and special sheets are included for this in the Kickstarter, in the pack of game sheets that I've got, that allow you to play 4 games of Fantasy Map Maker and join those maps up to make an epic continental map comprising of all 4 region maps. And if you choose to do that, then you will select one of these main quests: Archipelago, Swamplands, Highway, Alignment, Amazonia and Chaos. So you'll have an additional main quest that you play with. So that's kind of cool, something that I will look forward to checking out at some point. And then the final card type is the events cards. So these are extra bits of gameplay that you can tag on to the main game in order to make it more difficult, more challenging. So at the start you pick up to 6 events and you assign them to a number. We'll talk about how events work in a minute, but yeah, they make the game more challenging. So for example, meteor impact, you draw a crater and then you lose 5 points if any features are added to that space. So it sort of creates a bit of a no man's land where you can't really play stuff, or maybe you're forced to in order to gain points in some other way. Or a drought, or the Great Rift. Draw a chasm along 6 connected land spaces. No feature may cross the chasm, so you can't have any rivers or roads that go across. So they all add little wrinkles or little ways that you might lose points and little bits that will make the game more challenging. Now I have picked a couple of events for us to play with in the game on this video. When I've played off camera, I have just played sort of nicely without events, but I figured probably we should try and demonstrate at least a couple. So we're going to chuck a couple in. It might be that they don't happen, but they'll be in there and we'll talk about them and we'll keep an eye out for the doubles that will generate them. Alright, I'm just going to move the rule book to one side and then we will lay out and go over the cards that I have selected at random for us to play with in this playthrough video. So first up we've got Mountain Shadows. 4 points per space that has a landmark and a mountain. So we're going to want to place some mountains and then we're going to want to tuck some landmarks nearby. That sounds to me like quite an easy one to achieve. Might be famous last words. Then we've got the power of 2. 2 points per 2 written in the wheel. So as you are playing, you place numbers into the wheel and we will hopefully be prioritizing some 2s whenever we can. Land's Lifeblood. 1 point per space that has a river. Okay, that's good. So we just want some nice long wiggly windy rivers. Endless Coast. 1 point per space the longest continuous coast is in. That pairs quite nicely with the river one because rivers have to end somewhere, either in a lake or the edge of the map or in an ocean. Finally, we've got the capital. Spaces earn points for how many houses they contain. So nice and simple. If a space has 3 houses, you get 1 point. 6 houses, 3 points. 9 houses, 5 points, and so on. So we're going to want to have some nice big clusters of houses. And then we've got 2 events that we're going to use. Volcano and Terror of the Deep. So volcano, you draw a volcano in, and then you lose 1 point per space that has forest in the same quadrant as the volcano. And a quadrant is 1/4 of this map area that we've got to draw in. So if we had a volcano here, then any forested square within that quadrant would lose us some points. And then Terror of the Deep, draw a sea monster in an ocean or a lake within a space. And then you lose 1 point per house in the same quadrant as the sea monster. So that could be bad with our capital objective, but there you go. We've got 2 events. I'm going to pop them off to one side. Then I might try and get you a little bit closer and have a quick rearrange. Alright, that should be a little bit better. I've also got my 2d6 over here that'll be rolling during the game. I've filled in the numbers of the quests that we are playing with, and I've popped the letters of the 2 events in the 1 and 2 slot. So the way this works is very quick and simple. I'll do one roll just to discuss. So we've got a 6 and we've got a 2. So that means we can either write a 2 next to a feature in the 6th wedge, or we can write a 6 next to a feature in the 2 wedge. Nice and simple. If we were to roll a double, then that would trigger an event if we have an associated event with that double. Double 1s will have the Terror of the Deep, and double 2s we've got the volcano. But before we make a start on the game proper, we need to generate our first landmark. You always start off a game by rolling the dice and placing a landmark based upon the roll that you've made. So we've got 1, 3, and we're going to use those numbers as the coordinates. So we're going to either place our initial landmark here in 1, 3, or here in 3, 1. And our landmark options are listed down here, and obviously they're also in the rulebook. We've got castles, ships, keeps, mines, ruins, and temples. Castles count as 3 houses when scoring. Ships allow a player to draw any features in unexplored spaces, so it allows you to overcome some of the placement issues or restrictions that there are. A keep allows the player to ignore the results of one dice roll. Sometimes you don't want to do the thing that the dice rolls are allowing you to do. Mine allows the player to add 2 to 1 die. Ruins allows you to rearrange the numbers whilst keeping their total. And a temple allows you to add or subtract 1 from 1 die in a round. So I think I'm just going to go for a castle, keeping it simple, and we're going to place it up here. So there's my little castle. And that will count as 3 houses in that location. So that automatically means that our capital objective quest, we've got 3+, so that's going to score us 1 point, at least 1 point, hopefully more if we scatter a few more houses around it. And now we've got our starting landmark. That is where we're going to need to start adding features to our map. Because whenever you add a feature, it needs to be in a square that already has something in it. Some features go over multiple squares, and that's how you expand out into other regions. But we're going to go for it. We're going to roll our dice. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, we should have written the numbers we rolled for our starting location in the middle, and then we put a letter there to show which landmark we selected. And I'm only just realizing now that the layout of these wheels is different on some of the sheets. I thought they were all going to be the same, but this is different. Now you can only draw landmarks that are linked to a part of the wheel already used. So at the moment we only have access to these 6 here. But as soon as you do one, you then have access to the 2 beyond that. But as soon as you use one, you will then gain access to the features beyond that and further on still. So taking a quick closer look at this wheel, each of the features is represented by a different icon. This one here is the coast, and so I can see that initially we're going to have to draw coast, which is interesting. Looking beyond there, this is a river, this is a mountain, this is a lake, this is a road, this is houses, forests. There's only 3 forests. And then streams and names, because you can name features on your map. I don't think naming them has any effect, it's just kind of cool. When you name them, if we look around the edge here, you can see there's just loads and loads of words in a tiny, tiny font as a border. And these words can inspire you to name your features in interesting ways. So we've got dragon, barrow, twisted. So you could have the forest of the twisted dragon, goblin, village, shadow, grove. You could name a small forest the grove of the forsaken goblin, for example. So you can sort of mix those up and use them to imaginatively name your features. With all that said, I think we just need to roll and make a start. 2, 3. So we can either put a 3 here or a 2 here. So remember, we use 1 to select the wedge. So if we were to go for wedge number 2, we'd be putting 3 on the feature. And if we were to go for wedge number 3, we'd be putting 2 on the feature. And the number that you place on the feature dictates the size of that feature. The bigger the number, the bigger the feature. But I'm also thinking about what I want to unlock. Now, forests aren't particularly important for us, thankfully, but we do want to have some mountains, and we do want to have a very, very long coast, because we've got the endless coast objective. So maybe we'll just go for wedge number 2, and then we'll put a 3 in there, and we need to have a 3 long coast. So a coast is a long feature. Long features are coasts, rivers, and roads. And the number assigned to a long feature indicates how many of the lines on the map that feature has to intersect. And that includes the edge of the map as well. So since we have placed a 3, apparently in the wrong square, since we've got 3, we need to intersect 3 lines with our coast. So I might go there, there, and there. Basically, we want to have a great big chunky landmass as much as possible, because we don't need any islands really. There we go. That is our first bit of coast. So it goes through 1, 2, 3 lines. Now, eventually, we're going to need our coast to join up. This is a good point, actually. With the edge of the map in 2 places. Because if it doesn't, that counts as an error. And when you're scoring, you have to lose points based on those errors. And that's actually made me think that probably, rather than intersecting this line here, we should take it up to the edge of the map. Because the way I've done it, well, maybe not. Because I was thinking that I'm going to have to go out there with that coast. But we don't necessarily have to. We could take it down this way and do carry on and wiggling it around. Maybe that'd be more interesting. I'm going to leave it. Since I've done it, I'm going to leave it. I'm just going to draw some little squiggly wiggly waves around the edge, because why not? And that's it. That's the first round done. We're going to keep on going. 3 and a 5. So this is going to be more coast, because all of the starter ones are coasts, which is kind of good for the endless coast objective. So I think it makes sense for us to go in wedge 3 and put a 5 there. How are we going to do this? Now let's come around this way initially. I'm going to do what I just said. I'm going to have this be a sort of a little bay and then carry on over that way. Alright. Hopefully this is okay. Okay, there we go. 1 and a 2. That's not brilliant, because if we put a 2 there, we're just getting a mere 2 bits of coast. But if we use the 2 to dictate the wedge and then put a 1 here, we're just getting a mere 1 house. And we want to be banging out the houses because our capital objective means that houses are pretty important to us. And forests, we don't really need any forests. We could just put in a little forest. There's no harm in it. So maybe we'll do that. We'll put a... Oh, the other thing to consider is if we put a 2, that does get us our power of 2. It gives us some points towards that objective. So maybe I should do that. So yes, a 2 doesn't give us much more coast. However, we have got 3 more coast things that will allow us to hopefully bolster that up. So 2 more bits of coast. I'm going to use that to finish this, I think. And so that counts as 1, and then going off the edge counts as 1 as well. So at least we've got one end of our coastline completed. And then this one we need to bring down here to give us not lots of land to play with. And we need to think about getting some mountains in soon. 1 and 4. So we don't really want to do 1 coastline. So I guess it's going to be 4 mountains or a 4-length river. And both of those are good options. Maybe we should get a big old chunky mountain range in. So we use 1 for the wedge and 4 to get some mountains in play. Now, mountains. So this square will be all mountain, and then we'll have mountains bleeding into this square and into this square. Sorry, I just realised that when I finished that last bit of coast, it was off the bottom of the screen, and you wouldn't have seen that. Right, so we have got our area of mountains down here. Let's carry on. 1 and 4 again. So maybe we need to use that on a river, because this option here is for a river. The other alternatives here would be lakes, which we can now reach because we used this mountain one, or we could start a landmark. Landmarks are a little bit different. We would choose a 1 or a 4 and place it in the first square. We would then roll the dice again and choose one of those 2 numbers to place in the second square. So if we ended up with like a 1 and a 3, then it would go either here or here. And if we ended up with a 5 and a 2, it would go here or here. However, I'm conscious of our mountains shadows objective, 4 points per space that has a landmark and a mountain. Now, I don't have a huge number of mountainous regions yet, so I run the risk of not being able to put our landmark in a square with mountains. So if I used our 1 and then re-rolled the dice, I'd be hoping for a 5 or a 6 to put the landmark in one of these two spaces. And knowing my luck rolling dice, I don't really like those odds. So we could go for a river. I think that's what we're going to do. A river with a length of 4. We could put the river in here, 1 point per space that has a river. So really we need to be slapping rivers in everywhere. And we could even bring it in up here and then go, it'd be 1 for the edge of the map, 2, 3, and then finish it off round here into the ocean. I might do that. So we'll have the river coming in there, meandering around. Not sure why geographically that would happen, but it has happened. And then coming out there. I'll rub out a little bit of my line to make it pretty. There we go. So that's good. Nice river action there. I might start putting in some lone trees. They're not going to have any effect on the gameplay. I just like having a few trees. And it seems we're not going to have a very forested map here, since we've got no objectives that require it. Okay, keep going. 2 and 3. Do we need roads? We don't so much need roads, do we? We can still pop roads in. It doesn't have any negative effect. But if we use the 2 for wedge 2, we could have either have a 3-space forest, which really would just be taking up room, or 3 houses. And maybe that's what we should be doing here. Maybe we should just be slapping more houses. I mean, 3, it could be better. I would rather have had 6, but we've got to use something. So I think we'll say 3 there, and we'll put 3 houses in with our castle. Give them little doors as well. You probably can't see that, but they're adorable. Okay, keep going. Oh, it's the same. I'm not quite ready to start naming things. I mean, we could name the river. So maybe we should do that. Maybe we should just start churning out a few names. So we're going to use 2 for the wedge, 3 for that name option there, and then that means we're going to name 3 features. And I'm going to name these mountains down here. I'm going to name this bay. Should we call it a bay? And we'll also name this river here. So I'm going to look around the edge for some interesting words. Gulch. Tower. Well, I haven't seen... I didn't see the word dagger, but the word occurred to me. So we're going to call this Dagger River. Struggling to write on the wonk here. So there's Dagger River. What about the bay? We've got the words Misty and Haven over there. So let's have Misty, Haven, Bay. And then the mountains, let's go for an old school sounding Cursed Mountains. Just realised I've switched between capital letters and lowercase letters, and that is going to bug me. Alright, you might notice the lighting has changed a little bit there because a few hours have passed and I'm now filming in the evening, but we're going to carry on nonetheless. Here we go. 3, 5. So we can have a 5-length river or a 3-length coast. We do want to continue extending our coast. Maybe 3 will cut it. If I go round there like that, or over there, that'll give us 2 coastal options remaining, and that should allow us to connect it up. So I think we will do that. We'll focus on getting a bit more coast in. So a 3 there. Let me just turn on my little light over here. There we go. You want that purpley hue that all of you probably subconsciously realise was there but never really notice. Right, so a 3 coast, I think. 1, 2, 3. We'll go down there. Remember, we're trying to intersect 3 lines. 1, 2, 3. So we're creating a nice land mass over there on which we can have some more buildings, hopefully, and some more rivers and some mountains for us to put some landmarks in the shadow of. Yeah, all good. 2, 2. Oh, 2, 2 is an event. That's going to give us a volcano. So remember, for a volcano, we will lose 1 point per space that has a forest in the same quadrant. Now we don't at present have any forests, and we don't have much need for forests either, so maybe we'll put the volcano down here. Then we just can't put any forests in this area here, which is not the end of the world. So we'll put the volcano here, maybe put it near the mountains, but kind of in its own sort of thing as well. I feel like I want to have some lava running down it. How about that? Maybe a bit of smoke coming out. Alright, so now we've got to pay attention to that. But that's not the end of the world. We can tick that off. We have now had our volcano take place, or get placed. We can carry on. 3-3. Did I mention that it was when you roll doubles? I can't quite remember. So the events trigger if you roll doubles. That's why the 2-2 triggered our volcano. A 3-3 would have triggered an event if we were challenging ourselves a little bit more and had put an event for the threes, but we haven't. So I think we just default to having to use a 3 over here. So really we should go for the river. Part of me wants to go for a forest just because it feels like a shame to not have any forests at all. And this really is just me acting out of a desire to have a beautiful looking map, which I think is a legitimate part of this game. The rules do mention how you can move features, so long as you're not affecting scoring, if you want to improve how it looks. So that you might find yourself having to sort of squidge a river over to fit a forest in or something like that. And as long as you're not affecting scoring, that's all good. So for 3, we've got to go through 3 points. So I'm going to do these 2 on the edge of the map here, this one in the middle, and we'll have a sort of a forest coming down like that. I don't want it to take up too much room. You've got to have at least one forest in a map, right? So there you go. I've hit that one, I've hit that one, and we're hitting this one here. So that's 1, 2, 3 points. I'm going to take it over this way a little bit to make it more visually appealing. And there's my forest. Just going to put in some little tree trunks. This is sort of my go-to forest style when I'm drawing an overland map. Keep meaning to experiment with other sort of visual styles, but there you go. There's our forest. Okay, I think we'll have 2 more rolls and then we'll pause and we'll finish this up in a second video to prevent this from getting too long. We've got 3-5, so we could have a 5-length river, which would be no bad thing because we get 1 point per space that has a river. I think that might be a good idea. So we'll go for 3-5. I think we're going to start down here, and we're going to have a sort of, or maybe we'll start over here. We're going to have a crazy river that goes 1, 2, 3, 4. That basically what I'm thinking is if I leave the river incomplete, then we'll have to sort of bring it over to either the edge of the map or to Misty Haven Bay in order to finish it. But I think that's okay. So we're going to go from the mountains here over there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then it's going to come round the volcano and then sort of temporarily finish there. Now, I imagine that if this was reality, this river would have flowed into the ocean here. But this is a fantasy map. And fantasy maps don't always conform with the expectations of reality. Let's have one more roll. 5-5. Okay, so obviously no event in slot 5. So we've either got a big chunk of mountains, which I don't think we really need, or 5 houses. And 5 houses is the logical thing to do. Remember, we are earning points per space with houses based on how many houses there are. So we could just bung them all around the castle. Remember, the castle counts for 3, so there's already 6 there. So this would take us up to 11, which would be 1 off getting 9 points for that space. I'm not really sure on the rules of how small you can make houses. I think you can fit 15 into a square quite easily, and any more than that is unnecessary, I think, for any of the objectives. So, I mean, I guess you could draw your houses really small, but it's probably not necessary. So, as I said, that goes up to 12. So if I add 3 more houses to this square, that gets us up to the maximum score level for the capital. And then we can make up a few more points by putting some houses elsewhere. I should have said for each of the objectives, you can score a maximum of 20 points. So if I take the capital up to a total of 15, that means there's still 5 points to be hoovered up in other locations. And if you want to do well in solo against the AI opponents, you are going to have to maximise your points. But yeah, that gives us a nice little capital here next to the unnecessary woods. And I think we've made a lovely start here to our fantasy map. Hope you enjoyed that, folks. If you've made it this far, I'm guessing this is a game that you are interested in, and I would encourage you to click on the link below to check out the Kickstarter or to follow along with the pre-launch page if it has not yet launched when this video goes live. Otherwise, folks, let me know in the comments down below what you think of this one, and I will see you next time. Join me for part 2, which will be linked in the description down below as long as part 2 has been released. See you there. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.